Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So I am beginning to think that the Democrats have absolutely lost their ever-loving minds. This over Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This is the Maryland man who was, of course, deported back to his native El Salvador and has become a cause célèbre for Democrats, so much so that a U.S. senator traveled yesterday to El Salvador to beg, to plead for the return of his constituent. Now, the whole thing is laughable, and the best part about it is, and it wasn't immediately clear to me yesterday when I was on air talking about this, just how absurd the timing of it was, and that it, in fact, may very well have been a setup. You see, Pam Bondi released the evidence, right? Released the court records that detailed the suspicions that not one but two judges found that Mr. Garcia was, in fact, a probable cause that he was an affiliate of the MS-13 gang. And she releases it right as the senator is up in the air. This is absolutely hilarious stuff and a great troll. But the purpose behind it, of course, is to discredit the Democrats. So Van Hollen, Chris Van Hollen, has given an update on this. We'll play that in a minute. But the issue, of course, is that I think this whole thing is falling apart for them. And try as they might, the left is desperate to stick to the story that now has been completely debunked, that this is just some poor innocent guy who was, father of two, nice guy, family man, the wife describing him as a love of her life. Even that part of it has now come undone as court records have been released detailing abuse, violence, and a restraining order filed by the same wife back in 2021. So the whole thing now, is gone upside down. And I think, my takeaway is that the Democrats used to be a party that at the very least knew how to play political games and play them well. They've lost even that competitive edge. They don't have the ideas. In fact, the stuff that they stand for is ludicrous and out of touch with the American public, but now they don't even have, the ground game. It's wild stuff. You're seeing a party once dominant in the country absolutely come apart before our very eyes. Now, this is, and perhaps explains why, the mainstream media continues to lie about this particular case, because they sense that if they give it up on Abrego Garcia, it all comes undone. And here's, the story is very important, right? This guy comes to the U.S. He hasn't been in the U.S. that long. It's 2011-ish. He enters the U.S. without documentation. He's 16, and he claims to be fleeing threats from a rival gang called Barrio 18. Now, it's now defunct. It's no longer in existence, probably because the new president of El Salvador, Bukele, has rounded them all up and put them in a supermax prison. So he settles. Abrego Garcia settles in Maryland. His brother is now a U.S. citizen, resides there. And, about 8 years later, Hyattsville police find him. Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, the nice guy, found him socializing with confirmed MS-13 gangbangers. Now, I remember growing up in Orange County in California. We had a big, federal and local gang task force here. And people were sent to prison for mere affiliation, right? I mean, the steps that under federal law, back when I was a kid, let's say 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, what our government did to try to disassemble gang activity in Santa Ana, California, for example, was extreme. On this basis alone, right? In years past, this guy may have been, brought up on RICO charges. But okay, setting it aside. So the guy that he is socializing, it was okay. So all four of them, by the way, here are the people that he was with. The police recognized a guy named Christian Romero Hernandez. He's a known MS-13 member. They'd encountered him before. Another guy, Jose Guillermo Dominguez, had tattoos with skulls covering their ears, eyes, and mouth. This is apparently indicative of Hispanic gang culture, and tattoo of a devil on his left leg. Only high-ranking MS-13 officials are allowed to get it with horns. And the report does not indicate if it had horns or not. And then, of course, Mr. Garcia. He had a gang clothing, a hoodie that depicted rolls of cash covering U.S. president's eyes, ears, and mouth. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Indicative, again, of gang culture and a confidential informant. And this is part of the documentation released yesterday by Pam Bondi, who had been reliable in the past, said that this Abrego Garcia was an active MS-13 member. And his the rank was Chequio, and his street name Chele. The final man arrested that day, Jason Juice Ramirez Herrera. Officers were unable to determine his gang affiliation, but he's most interesting because I like the fact that they didn't find that he had this gang affiliation because they weren't looking to rationalize it. They said that, for example, Abrego Garcia had it and Ramirez Herrera didn't. You see what I'm saying? So this is just kind of the background. Now, in 2019, two immigration judges, not one, during separate bond hearings, both denied Abrego Garcia's request for bond. They found that the government's evidence alleging his membership in the MS-13 gang was credible for the purpose of denying bond. And the judges determined that the government's evidence, though not conclusive proof of his gang membership, met the threshold required for denying bond due to the perceived public safety risks. Now, in immigration bond hearings, the government bears the burden of proof, okay? It's a lower burden of proof, but it's still there. And I want to insert something here that's very important, just as an attorney. When you are looking whether to give somebody protected status as an illegal immigrant, there is a very, very low, even lower than in a bond hearing, standard for proof for showing things that are undesirable. It's very important that we do not allow people who are bad people to remain in the country, particularly if they've already come through the gate into the, through the back door, let's say, and have broken laws doing so. The way these immigration courts work is really even a whiff of bad news is enough for an immigration judge to deny you residency, or conversely, to have your green card revoked, which is what is now going on, by the way, in a couple other proceedings that the Trump administration is moving forward with, right? You've got the guy who has, supporting an organization, leading an organization on the campus of Columbia University that is affiliated with Hamas. Not good. But back to Abrego Garcia. So in 2019, an immigration judge issues a deportation order, okay? Now, what's, 2019, this is in Trump 1.0 in his first term. Abrego Garcia made an asylum claim. He had not made that claim before. The judge denied his asylum request, but granted him a withholding of removal order to El Salvador due to a well-founded fear. Now, this allowed him to legally live and work in the U.S. with a work permit, but it did not give him, this is really important, any permanent residency. Now, in 2021, this is when the restraining order comes through, right? His wife alleges that he punched and scratched her eye, caused bleeding, that he ripped her shirt off. I mean, the report is actually the application that his wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, who now is reaping money from a GoFundMe account claiming tremendous marital and family bliss, I think, is difficult to read. So this is now flash forward to 2022, and it starts to get very interesting because it turns out that this very same guy, Abrego Garcia, was detained by the Tennessee Highway Patrol in December of 22 during Biden's term, and they suspected him of human trafficking. He was transporting 7 passengers from Texas to Maryland in a vehicle without a valid driver's license. One source told 2 different newspapers that the Tennessee Highway Patrol ultimately discovered that Abrego Garcia was on a terror watch list, but couldn't locate him on a deportation list. So this guy had been already by some agency placed on this list. And then when the Tennessee people, went to the FBI, all right, it got even weirder. They go to the FBI. The FBI right now, of course, is busy arresting every mom, pop, person that was at January 6th. So their hands were tied to actually act on legitimate tips of people on terror watch lists. And I guess the FBI instructed the Tennessee Highway Patrol people to photograph all 8 individuals and release them within 2 hours. If you didn't hate Biden's FBI enough, then I don't know what to tell you. So the Tennessee folks over there, the troopers, had to comply with it, and that was the end of the investigation. There are a lot of unanswered inquiries, but one thing that I draw almost definitively from this is that it's good that Trump finally got rid of this guy. He doesn't belong in the U.S. And all of this has come out in the last 24 hours, coinciding with Chris Van Hollen's ridiculous mercy mission to El Salvador, pleading for the release of the Maryland man, the nice father of 2 and husband, loving, doting husband. This is all of it so gross, and it's going to backfire. If it isn't already, you're watching it in real time backfire on the Democrats. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam & Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Greetings, friends. Welcome. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, as always, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT. My email, sam@whatsrightshow.com, sam@whatsrightshow.com. And on Twitter, on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam. So the reason I think that this Abrego Garcia story is so funny to me, or so important, and at the same time so entertaining, is that the Democrats have decided that this was going to be the hill they die on. It's all anyone is talking about. And I have all of my liberal friends, by the way, are texting me, are saying, Sam, this case is outrageous. I got a text the other day. I'm not going to tell you who it was from. I'm not going to tell you. That's not the point, but this is a very intelligent person here in Las Vegas who is an attorney who's very smart. And I'll pull this up because, no, I wanted to. Oh, yeah. She goes, hey, we have to talk about Abrego Garcia. This was yesterday at 3:30. Now, mind you, yesterday at 3:30, that was 30 minutes after we were off air, we already knew that there were not one, but two judges that found by a preponderance of evidence standard that there was a likelihood that this guy was MS-13. Okay? We already found out that he had been a wife beater. We already found out that, right, that his wife at least made that allegation. And since I'm talking to a Democrat here, believe all women. So just letting you know. So a lot of this bad stuff was coming out. And she goes, we got to talk about this. What an effing mess. I responded, because it's me, I'm always, kind of poking my friends. So I said, imagine being the party who fights to keep illegal immigrants suspected of being gang members in the country. Right? Because that is the most charitable way of putting this, is that he was merely suspected of being a gang member. But that's not, by the way, and Robbie and I were talking during the break, there is a lower evidentiary standard for proof there in these immigration cases. And it depends on what is being sorted out. Clear and convincing is the higher standard. It's still not the criminal standard, right? It's lower. So depending on who has the burden, right, which in this case is the government, to prove that this guy is bad news, it's a much lower standard than you have in a criminal case. Just to be clear, right? Which means that you don't need to have as much evidence as you would in a murder trial or in a kidnapping case or a theft case, even. And it goes down from there. And there's even a preponderance of evidence standard. So there's a very low standard of proof. And I think people understand, so well, where was the criminal proceeding against this guy? To determine that he was a bad apple, unworthy of remaining in the U.S. as somebody who had entered the country illegally, the government didn't have to go and have a 3-week trial about this. They just had to convince a judge that, hey, this guy's not good. And by the way, that is due process. Due process doesn't mean that you get a trial, that you get 12 people on a jury like OJ did. Due process means that there is some process. It can be even an administrative process by which someone's rights, are taken away, or by which something occurs. And the answer, of course, is the more that is taken away, the more rights that are taken away, the more process is required. So there's a lot of process involved. For example, if the state wants to take your life and fry you for being a murdering rapist, and there's less involved if you're just maybe an MS-13 gang member that we think you really are. And by the way, also on a terror watch list. And oh, by the way, kind of, maybe perhaps a little bit of a violent person, ripping your wife's shirt off and scratching her eye and punching her. So, all of that put together, is it enough? Yeah, it's enough. And see you later. Because he's not a citizen. Stripping somebody of their citizenship is a big deal. But this guy wasn't a citizen. And he wasn't even one of these temporary protected people. They just had a withholding order saying don't deport him. Little reminder here. Remember when Stephen Miller, we didn't play this clip, did we, Robbie, of him outside the White House? He says, do you know what a difference between a deportation order and a withholding order is? You even know? And the reporters are standing out there like, I'm not the one you're not the one asking questions. We're asking questions. And these people are so dumb. The media people are so stupid. And they, in turn, misinform most of the country. And I found that I'm talking to some very rational people who, albeit are left-wingers, and they don't know any of this stuff. A withholding order just means you're holding off on deporting him. It doesn't even, I mean, yeah, you get some work permit and stuff like that, but it's a very, very tenuous, limited right to remain in the United States. And the lower of a right that it is, okay, then, of course, guess what? The less due process is required to strip it away. And there, I've just explained to you why the Trump administration is going to keep winning this thing and be on the right side of history on it, in spite of their histrionics. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Be right back in a moment. All right, folks, it's me, Sam Mirejovsky, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Hope you are doing great out there. I am, for one, enjoying this beautiful Thursday. Okay, I got to get to Chris Van Hollen. This loser from Maryland, he's the senator there. He decided, somebody probably on his staff, probably some 20-year-old numbnut, in college goober, told Chris Van Hollen, hey, Senator, I got this idea. You're going to get on a plane. You're going to film everything. You're going to video it. We're going to give you a little lapel mic that you're going to carry with you. You're going to do a live report, basically, for social media of you going down to El Salvador and begging for Abrego Garcia's return. You're going to get this guy back. And even if you don't succeed, you've at least taken a stand. And this will be remembered as the most heroic thing you've ever done. You will become the face of the Democratic Party's resistance to, Donald Hitler. Okay? And this is how you're going to do it. And this guy, bless his heart, this white dude, Democrat from Maryland's like listening to his little, I don't 20, 25, whatever, fresh out of college, media intern and slash, this is the pulse of the country. I'm tapping into the pulse of the country. This guy didn't tap in the pulse of the country. He literally put his fingers in an electric socket. And the reason I know that, and I'm starting to realize this, is because I see when I look at these, when I look at what he's putting, yesterday, his clips were all very defiant. Like, we're going to get this guy back. And I almost feel like he is backtracking a little bit. This is Chris Van Hollen this morning.
I've had back-to-back meetings here in El Salvador, and the entire purpose has been to bring Abrego Garcia home because U.S. courts have determined that he was illegally abducted from the United States. The Supreme Court, 9-0, has told the Trump administration they must facilitate his return home. They've refused to do it. So I called upon the government of El Salvador to do it unless they can provide evidence that he's been involved in MS-13. They said they had no evidence. So this is not about MS-13. I know President Trump wants to make this about gang violence. I have been fighting MS-13 probably longer than Donald Trump even knew about MS-13. I care about every victim of crime. That's why we have a court system to hold people accountable when they commit crimes, to make sure that they get the punishment they deserve. We also have a court system to make sure that people who have not committed crimes or not been convicted of crimes are not disappeared. This is simply about letting him have his day in court. We use the courts to make sure that we don't convict people who are not guilty and that we convict those who are.
Well, this is all very lovely of him to say. I think it's absolutely absurd because, for example, Rachel Marin, who yesterday, her mom was at the White House, still hasn't gotten a call from Chris Van Hollen, right? So this guy doesn't care. But he voted against the Laken Riley Act. How is this not front page news? This guy is such a con artist. He had an opportunity to take a stand on behalf of American citizens, his actual constituents, and instead continues to double down in his support for illegal immigrant gangbangers. Again, I don't know who is advising him, but they ought to be run out of D.C. This is political malpractice, if this is some part of greater strategy. Now, Chris Van Hollen may actually be literally politically retarded, and that's on him. But a lot of these senators, and people don't realize this, it took me a while to realize it, a lot of politicians really don't know who they are. And I see this, by the way, on the Republican side. There are a lot of politicians that just want to be in office. That's it. They want the job. They got hooked on it. You know, they went to D.C. one time. They went to the state capital, Carson City, whatever. They're like, I'm going to be a lawmaker. I'm going to be, lieutenant governor. I'm going to be whatever. And I'm not, look, I'm here in Nevada. I'm literally not pointing fingers at anybody. I actually don't, certainly when it comes to Lombardo, and I don't, I'm not pointing that finger, or Stavros or anybody, but just generally speaking, right? They want the gig. They want the job. And then they sort of are flexible on how they get there. The people I want in politics are those that actually don't want the job. They're just pissed off enough about what's going on in their state, in their community, in their state, in their country, that they say, okay, I am so fed up with these 3 or 4 or 5 issues that that's it. I'm hanging up my day job and I'm going to go tackle this. And those are the people you want in office. And by the way, that's what makes Trump such a compelling candidate. So back to Chris Van Hollen. My general take on these people, because I've gotten a lot of your emails, I'm trying to respond to as many as I can, is that he just wants the job, and he sees this as a political opportunity, is not able to think beyond the nanosecond that is this blip of an issue that is not going to work out for Democrats. The longer that they double down on this, the worse that they get. That's it, right? That's the story. And, and if, by the way, last night, Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, was out there. She was on Stephen Colbert, complaining that if Trump can do this to one citizen from Maryland, this is how dumb they are. This guy was not a citizen. He was an illegal. He had a withholding order. That is it. Very minimum process to remove him from the country. He wasn't kidnapped. And I can't help it that multiple federal courts literally overlooked what previous state courts had found and immigration courts had found when it came to his bond hearings, Abrego Garcia's bond hearing. Anyway, here's Warren, Pocahontas, yes, feather, not red dot, Indian, talking about Mr. Abrego Garcia.
If Donald Trump and his henchmen can do this to one citizen from Maryland, they can do it to anyone. Whether American citizen, one resident of Maryland, they can do it to anyone. And that means nobody's safe. You speak out, you do something Donald Trump doesn't like, you do something one of Donald Trump's henchmen doesn't like, boom, and you are disappeared. That is truly what dictatorships are about, because the point of doing this is not just the one man. The point is to frighten everybody else.
Well, I actually agree with Elizabeth Warren, at least on the subject that it is intended to frighten everybody else, because that's the point. Aren't we right now fighting a in the midst of basically a public information campaign to dissuade people from coming to this country illegally? I mean, if I can, I'm just picturing this logistically. Yes, you can militarize the border. Yes, you can build barriers that are difficult to cross. Yes, you can ... do all sorts of things that make it difficult to get into the country, illegally crossing the border, certainly entering through airports, right, mitigation. But isn't it much better if you reduce the attempted illegal entries into the U.S. by some significant amount? And how do you do that? I've been saying this for months now. Ever since Tom Homan went on the road following January 20th, Trump becomes president. Tom Homan goes out there. These are the henchmen, of course, that our feathered friend talks about. Tom, why are the cameras rolling? What's the reason for that? I have an idea. I think it's because they're sending that video not out there to agitate Elizabeth Warren, give her hot flashes. It's to show everybody out there across the world these clips are getting played on Mexican state television. They're getting played down in Brazil. They're getting played in El Salvador. They're getting played in Guatemala. And it's news. And what's the news? Everybody's going, oh my God, look at what's going on to our brothers and sisters up in El Norte. And people sitting at home who were thinking, yeah, maybe we should move to America. I saw it was pretty easy. And, Trump may be tough, but it wasn't that bad the first time around. So I'm sure we'll be okay. They're looking at their wife. They're looking at their kids. They're left, right. And they're like, we're not doing that. Right? This is the miracle of advertising. And for the cost of an iPhone or a camera, or whatever it is, camcorder that they're following Tommy around with, that's enough. That's all it takes. So Elizabeth Warren isn't wrong. It is intended to scare the hell out of people. And making an example out of Abrego Garcia, where literally the administration is looking at Boasberg, who yesterday, this is the judge in D.C. who ordered the plane to be returned. This guy is getting involved at every turn. And Boasberg, by the way, is holding the Trump administration lawyers in contempt, even though the Supreme Court has come down and slapped his rulings down. He still wants to hold them in contempt because at the time that he issued his order, the Supreme Court hadn't ruled yet, and it was a verbal order, but they should have followed it and all this stuff. And he's throwing this petulant fit, being the small, petty, but black-robed tyrant that he is. And I mean, what's the takeaway? If you're watching this, my takeaway is, hell, the Trump administration is willing to be held in contempt by a federal judge for the sake of deporting one bad apple from the country. Well, I mean, if that's the lead story, it sure as hell's going to dissuade people from coming over. And I think this makes sense. I have to take a quick break. Sam Mirejovsky News. We have more Elizabeth Warren. Okay, let me see if we even want to do it. If it's good, I'll play it. Okay, don't go anywhere. The What's Right Show will be back in a minute. Okay, friends, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Yes. Email Sam at what'srightshow.com. Sam at what'srightshow.com. Robbie, I want to get into the Abrego Garcia story is also interesting because of AI. But I want to talk about the dumbing down of America. You don't want to miss this top of the hour here after the break. I'm just going to vent to you guys a little bit. You forgive me. But I want to talk about just some experiences that I've had as an employer. And it ties into the AI thing. So trust me, it'll all come together. But I'm just warning you. There's a rant incoming. Now, speaking of rants, I'm not going to play more of Pocahontas because I think I want to move on from that. But the presumptive leader of the Democratic Party, there's people now saying that AOC is it, that she's going to run in 2028, and that the likelihood of her being the candidate is huge. Well, two things, right? One, I wouldn't underestimate AOC. Okay, I wouldn't underestimate her. I think she's got keen political instincts, and I think that she is persuasive to a certain extent. I don't think people look at her and think president, though. A lot would have to change over the next, 3 years. Okay, that's my 10 cents. But AOC, she's also on the bring back Abrego Garcia, bring him back. She's on this bandwagon. And here is her at the most recent Fight the Oligarchy rally. And her remarks, now just think of this through the eyes of, imagine this person running for president.
And we also demand the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia in El Salvador.
El Salvador!
And we tell President Bukele, if we believe in democracy, he must be returned. It is criminal that he is being held abroad. And we demand these things because we do have power in this moment. All of us do. Everyday people do.
Why does she sound like J-Lo in Made in Manhattan? Right, I just got that. Gosh, this woman her voice is grating to me. Look, I'm going to say this again. I want the Democratic Party to continue to be the party that wants to return criminal illegal aliens into the country. I want to put her up against Patty Marin all day long. Right? I'll do it all day long. I think that's the, Patty Marin yesterday in the White House press briefing, and I got to give Robbie credit for assembling that on the fly, basically, because they were doing the press briefing while I was on air, and I had I've got these screens going on of stuff happening, currently, and so I was observing that it was happening, but I couldn't listen to it. So she described how her daughter had been attacked by an illegal alien, a criminal illegal alien, who bashed a 6-inch square hole in the back of her skull and violently raped her. There's no way you can listen to that and not literally want to, strangle everyone in the Biden administration for allowing this to happen. It was all foreseeable. They did it on purpose. And Chris Van Hollen, who cares about a crime and had been studying MS-13 before Trump even knew about it, never even called this lady. And her daughter was a constituent of the senators. Astounding stuff. So here's another part. Patty Marin yesterday at the White House talking about this. I'll take this over AOC and Chris Van Hollen all day long. We are the party that supports Patty Marin. We are not the party as Republicans that supports Abrego Garcia.
When he was sitting in the courtroom, he actually looked like he thought he was going to be set free. There was no remorse on his face at all. This person took my daughter so violently and so gruesomely and so graphically that they sealed the pictures, because I don't want my granddaughters to see these pictures. These are the kind of criminals President Trump wants to remove from our country. These are the kind of criminals that we need to remove from our country. We are American citizens. Why should we allow people like this, violent criminals that have no conscience at all, to murder our mothers, our sisters, our daughters? I don't understand.
I don't understand it either, and it just moves me to tears. So I guess, how does America feel about this? Today on CNN, turns out, according to Harry Enton, a majority of Americans want all illegal immigrants deported. Listen.
Deport all undocumented immigrants. Voters favoring the government trying to deport all 11 million of them. Back in 2016, just 38% of voters wanted the government to try to deport all 11 million undocumented immigrants. Compared to where we are in 2025, 56%, the majority. The American people have come a long way on this issue, much closer to Donald Trump, and I think that's a big part of the reason why Americans are increasingly saying the country is on the right track when it comes to immigration policy, and why Donald Trump's net approval rating on that issue is in the positive.
There it is. We, as Republicans, Trump as president, is on the right side of this issue. Everyone else is completely out of touch. Fighting for an illegal immigrant gangbanger to come back in the U.S. is a losing political idea, I think. Okay, when we come back, let's talk about what will set up you, your kids' kids for success in a future America. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Greetings, friends. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Welcome to the program. Here behind the What's Right microphone, as always, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Okay. Part of this Abrego Garcia story, of course, is how catastrophically misinformed people are. And people are misinformed, right? By and large, there's certain reasons for this, right? And we understand this because we're common sense people. People are, some of it is willful, right? There's just a willful disregard of facts. But then there's a lot of this is caused simply by the fact that the media tell lies. And because we are increasingly going to be dependent on AI for answers, right? We used to Google, like everybody Googled, and that is rapidly changing. People are now asking Grok, they're asking ChatGPT or the other AI programs for answers. And I personally, look, I've said this before here, quick aside on AI, it's the future. But you need to learn how to use it. You can't just ask Grok for an answer or ChatGPT and be satisfied with it. Now, Robbie, you found this clip, speaking of Abrego Garcia, right? People just don't know the fact that he's actually, has some proof that he's a gangbanger, okay? MS-13 guy. And if you poll people out on the street, most people will tell me, and I do this, I've been going around and I ask people because I'm curious about it. What do you know? Oh, he's just a nice guy living in Maryland. He wasn't legal, but he had an ability to stay in the U.S. and he was totally not a gang member, a good guy, and they just came in and the Gestapo took him. Right? I mean, that's sort of the narrative, and people think this. And it's funny you sent me this clip, Robbie, because I was fighting with Grok yesterday about Carmelo Anthony. This is the black teen who allegedly stabbed through the heart with a knife at a track meet, a white student. And of course, there's been an outpouring of support from libs and from the black community for the black teen, and it's turning into a huge race war thing. And it's awful. It's disgusting. And and I want to get back into it, but it was after the show, and I was playing around with Grok, and I basically I had to argue with Grok, and I got Grok to change its mind. Okay, I'm talking to a computer. And it's so funny, Robbie, that you sent me this thing of Tim Pool talking about Abrego Garcia. Now, it starts with the litter boxes. Here, I'll play the clip. This is Tim Pool, famous podcaster, explaining what happened to him the other day, trying to get answers from ChatGPT.
Let me tell you guys why AI will destroy the world. All right?
How exciting.
We can watch iRobot.
It's because I asked it, ChatGPT, did a hotel put litter boxes out for furries? And it says there are no verified reports that this ever happened. And when pressed, well, there was an account in 2016 that, yes, this did happen, but there's no evidence of it happening. You mean like, did the guy who claimed to have put the litter box out taken a camera and filmed himself doing it?
Right.
No, the guy just said he did. And we say, okay, it's possible it happened, right? So then I just said, because it's lying to me, is Abrego Garcia an MS-13 gang member? What do you think it said?
There's no verified evidence that he's an MS-13 gang member.
Indeed, it says it's up for dispute. There's no evidence. So I asked, did 2 judges say he is? What do you think it said?
Yes.
Both judges found insufficient evidence that he was a member of MS-13.
That's a lie.
Absolutely.
The court
so
filing
then I
says
said,
the opposite.
why are you lying? And it says, I'm not lying. So then I said, a judge and an appellate judge in 2019. That's all I said. And it goes, apologies. You're correct. In 2019, a judge found the evidence was sufficient to determine he was a member of MS-13 and denied him bond, citing concerns to public safety. And then it says, a board of immigration appeals also stated the lower court appropriately considered the allegations and evidence and held that he wasn't a member of MS-13 and a danger to the community. And I said, so 2 judges found the claims credible and ruled as such. It says, yes, you are correct. And I said, you lied and said they found it insufficient. And it goes, you're right. And I appreciate you calling that out.
Wow.
The AI world will be one of the machine state lying to you for political reasons.
Yes. Now, I'm going to shift away from the political element of this. And I want to talk a little bit about what does this sort of mean for our country, right? And in not just political terms, but just overall. Because I don't know if you remember the Sam and Ash Injury Law, my firm, we did an essay contest, teen safe driving essay contest. And, when the submissions came in, it was all, we ended the contest in December. So it's very recent. And the people that were submitting the answers are basically teens of a driving age. It was through, I think, 20, I think was the cutoff. But you had to be in a Clark County school district program, some kind of program. And it was something like 82% of all the submissions that we got were written by AI, to the point where when I was promoting the contest and going on TV here in Vegas locally and talking about it, I had to tell people, I literally had to say, listen, but don't use AI, okay? We want you to write this, please, on your own. I had to beg people to do that. And so, so to me, my takeaway from that is that basically every kid right now in high school, in junior high, and in college is using ChatGPT in some way, function, or other to do their homework, to get, to learn, to study for school. And we have to completely change our frame of thinking. Now, it comes on the heel of something else that I think was very bad, indisputably bad. Because I'm not ready to call AI bad entirely. I just think we have to be aware of what it is. We got to talk about it, and we have to talk to our kids about it. We have to teach our kids how to use it at home and in school. All of this incredible technological advancement comes on the heels of COVID. And COVID, I'll tell you folks, I know I harp about it in so many different ways, but when it comes to the young people that I have now, for example, I'm looking to hire, and I've got some positions open in the firm, and so I'm doing interviews. And I mentioned to you, I think the other day, that somebody was interviewing using literally some sort of a chat bot, some kind of AI program, was answering questions based on AI. But the real problem is people that were in school during COVID, they didn't really learn anything. And I'm not just talking about third graders and fourth graders, certainly, right? Elementary school, hugely affected. But kids in college, They never were forced to sit in a class. And I know you're thinking, well, Sam, COVID happened in 20 and 21 and people graduating now sort of missed it. Wrong. These schools, right, bent over backwards for accommodating students. All you had to say is, oh, I'm afraid of COVID, or, oh, I need an accommodation. And professors, who previously, maybe 15 years ago, were, hard asses and had you sitting in class and answering questions. Now we're like, oh, well, whatever we need to do to accommodate you. Oh, you have somebody living in your household that is, that has, predisposition, right? As, or is likely to come down with COVID. So we were going to accommodate you. And so the people, right? So now these folks are coming into the real world of work. And they run into someone named Sam Mirejovsky, who's trying to run a law firm. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job, but regardless, and I have expectations. One, I expect you to be able to answer some basic logic questions, like off the top of your head. I'll say, I'm interviewing people, folks, and I'm asking them, okay, so we don't do criminal law, but I'm just, people know this better than they know the civil system. I'll say, so in a criminal case, what are the two sides called, right? Okay, like the person who's charged with the crime, what is he or she called? And people look at me like I'm an alien. I want to know that a criminal defendant, right? It's a defendant. Okay, good. Okay, so then I lead them into that. Then I say, okay, so tell me, who brings the case? Of course, I want to say it's the prosecutor, right? Like, there is no foundational knowledge that is coming out of, for example, here in Vegas from UNLV. They are so busy doing land acknowledgments and tiptoeing around kids' sensitivities that they are graduating with degrees and they do not understand how the world works. When Trump is going after right now Harvard and making an example out of Harvard, the reason I have zero tears for Harvard is because ostensibly the best or one of the best institutions in this country has obsessed with social justice, politics, blah, 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 activism. And they are not focusing on the basics of education. And they are somewhat selective, of course, so they have kids that are smart, that foundationally test into the school to the extent that they still have standards, right? They're bringing people in who know enough so they can get by without it. Lori Lightfoot teaches at Harvard. Lori freaking Lightfoot, a.k.a. Beetlejuice, former mayor of Chicago. There are more killings in Chicago today per capita than are in El Salvador, just to give you some reference. So these are the kind of things, right? I am actually very, very worried about this. And I'm gonna tell you, those of you out there who are loyal listeners, I am hiring right now in Vegas. I'm looking for good people, particularly somebody who is coming out of college and actually wants to learn something. I will teach you, but you got to be willing to learn, and you got to come from a background where you're not going to break down every 10 seconds emotionally because your boss told you, course corrected you a little bit. So email me, right? Sam@whatsrightshow.com if you know somebody who would fit that bill. But when I come back, because Trump, this war against higher institutions of learning is so critical. It's so important. We have to win this fight to get the country back. And it's happening at precisely the same time that there's this immense technological revolution afoot. And we either become slaves to it or we remain the masters. I have some thoughts on that. And I want to share that when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Robbie, hey, we're back. Okay, Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Yes, at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. And that's, by the way, where we dropped the link to the episode, the extra episode that we put up of my interview with Riley Lewis yesterday. And when we talk about this lack of educating young people, teaching them to be emotional, because that's what activism is, right? If it's all about activism, if it's all about social justice, you're just teaching kids to be reactive. Now we add to it AI. All AI is a giant computer, and this is a huge oversimplification, that scours available resources that are on the internet and answers questions based on what they think is most reliable information. But if a bunch of stuff that is put on the internet is put out there by a bunch of deeply unreliable, mentally unstable, crazy people that work at MSNBC or Wikipedia, then whatever AI gives you is going to be wrong. And being educated enough to know that it's wrong is very important. And when we talk about the radicalization that comes from the media and the misinformation and the way that it is riling people up and it's making them irrational, and by the way, making them terrible at work, in the office, making them unproductive. So this all matters. And I sat down with Riley Lewis the other day. We put this up on our platforms last night, which of course is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and X, at What's Right Show, at What's Right Sam. And we talked about this. And I just want to play for you a short clip of what Riley and I spoke about. And Riley, of course, is the host at OAN, One America News. And he's absolutely spot on here.
Big picture, the thing that just really concerns me, whether it's Fox, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, whatever it is, lies and propaganda and misinformation is tearing the American people apart, more so than anything else. I think that's really the source of polarization and division, and even some instances of political violence now that we were just talking about the other day on my show. People are getting violent and restless, and it takes a lot of forms, but I get the sense that we're kind of bubbling up towards something bigger happening in this country. I don't know, but I think the media is by and large responsible for it, and in large part. So I don't know what they're going to do, honestly, with you, Sam. And I don't know if they can even, they might just be better off to try to start over at this point, quite frankly. There's so much baggage and so much explaining and twisting to do. And that's the thing about liars that I've learned in my own personal life. They just can't keep the lies straight. They have to keep inventing new information, try to keep their story straight. And eventually it just falls apart. It's like a tangled pair of headphones, and they just don't know where to begin.
Yeah, and Riley's exactly right. And remember, one of the big stories right now, Harvard, I guess Trump just pulled, it's nothing, right? The $3 million grant to Harvard for something got pulled. It was was it a DHS grant? Some sort of grant. He's going by department because these institutions all are intertwined with the feds. But the big one is that he's having the IRS pull Harvard's tax-exempt status because Harvard decided to take a stand. Because again, they're all dumb and they're all into social activism and they're going to resist Trump. And what Trump wants to do, and it's so important, it benefits everybody. It's hugely important to the survival of this republic, is he wants schools to get back to teaching. He wants schools to get back to simply doing what's their purpose, just giving kids an actual usable education. I'm bringing this back to AI, of course, right? If all the school is doing is teaching you how to be an activist, and I stopped let's talk about UNLV for a minute. You know, I stopped going to stuff at UNLV. I did that when I moved to town. I wanted to meet people and whatever and go to different events. Every freaking time I went to UNLV, they did one of those land acknowledgments. I have some news for you folks, you UNLV, leaders. Number one, bring back Hey Reb, okay? Bring him back. Show us that you don't have your head so far up your ass that you need to, by the way, that whole thing, and we've covered this before, all a fake story that he's a Confederate symbol. None of that is true. Demonstrate that you have found your way. And number two, stop doing land acknowledgments. Oh, we're here on the sacred hallowed ground left behind by the Shoshone Indian, whatever the hell. The minute people start saying that, I automatically have taken whatever IQ you think you have, or we thought you had, and I'm just deducting 25 points, like just bam, right there. Get back to making students graduate that are hireable. Because the thing about AI is, we're not far off from being able to create our own AI modalities for law firms, for example, that deal with a closed ecosystem of information and give prompts to that AI modality that then does the work of a person. I'm telling you, this is here already. So, what's going to happen? I mean, people are going to get replaced by computers, and all they're going to know is how to do land acknowledgments. Thank you, UNLV. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, back after this. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. What happens when a university just pumps out social activists? And those social activists go out there in the real world and go, oh, I need a job. I need to go work at a law firm. I need to go work at an accounting firm. I need to go work somewhere. And they can't think about anything. It's all regurgitation of slogans. That's all that they did in college. It is a disastrous failing on the part of schools, of higher ed, and of course, I think also high schools and school districts across the country that are really failing these kids. So Gen Z, which, is like from 1995 to 2012-ish. So people say like between like 7 and 24, okay? So the early Gen Z kids now are in the workforce, right? They've left college, they've gone to school, and they're in the workforce. And they went through COVID. Then they went through, now are in the midst of AI, and they're like, oh, look, AI can do my homework for me. So I can just be an activist, and then AI does my work, and then I can complain about being sensitive, and I get all these accommodations. Then they go into the workforce, and then they're terrible. And in turn, the AI that let them do their homework is going to turn around and take their jobs. You need to demonstrate that you are more smart than the computer. That's how you get ahead. And if you have a high school student, junior high school student, early college student, you have to talk to them about this. Because if you're just relying on the computer, it's going to be a year or so, and that computer will replace you. I've talked about this before, and I have some background in this because I started a tech company called K-Spear, and we make legal software, and a lot of my competitors use it. So it's something that is a little bit, interesting about me. I'm a little bit different than your average lawyer. And so I understand technology, and I saw Eric Schmidt, and think of Eric Schmidt. What do you want? I mean, he's a former CEO of Google, and he's a big lib, but he had a thing, gave some remarks somewhere the other day, and he talks about how the software is now to the in the stage where about 20 to 30% of the code is being written by the machine itself. And in 1 year, it will become fully self-generating, meaning AI will continue to write more code on AI and self-perfect itself, which is frightening. So what are you supposed to do if you're UNLV, if you're Harvard, if you're these schools? I'll tell you, number one is a kid that knows how to recite, land acknowledgments and do social justice isn't going to make it very far. Number one. Number two, sadly, I don't think it's sadly, but I think that more kids, and I've told this to my son, why college? I mean, my son wants to go to college to play water polo. That's his thing. But I don't think you learn anything in college. And I sit on the board of a great university. I'm on the board of Chapman University in Orange, California, and I love my school. I went there. I'm a dual alumnus. I'm a double Panther. Went there for undergrad and for law school. But listen, if you want to be a lawyer, yeah, you've got to go to law school. If you want to be a doctor, to undergrad, to college. If you want to be a lawyer, you've got to first do undergrad. If you have specific things, right, you need the schooling. But a lot of jobs out there now, particularly with Trump's, tariff and economic plan, if manufacturing comes back to the U.S., learning how to work in a factory and then learning how to manage the factory and be a foreman and be a leadership role, that's something that, computers won't take away as quickly. Fixing plumbing, electrical work, the trades, construction is not something that AI is going to, that's not a job AI is going to take over. But writing, blog posts about, Native American injustices, that AI can spit out already today. If that's your contribution to life, you're screwed. I got news for you. It's over. And the best you'll be able to do, unless you learn a trade, is to wait on tables. And I'm telling you right now, one of the things that's going to come out of the AI revolution is that waiters and waitresses are going to become a dime a dozen. Talk about wage depression. We are. I don't know. Change is scary. I'm terrified of it, but at the same time, you have to understand what's coming, and you're not going to be able to legislate around it. They'll try. You'll see countries trying. But you can't put this genie back in the bottle. The tech's going to take over. And incidentally, if you're not able to think for yourself, which a lot of these liberals aren't, this is the huge advantage that we will have as conservatives. We can think for ourselves. We've already learned to disregard the media. We've already learned to understand that they lie to us. So we understand. Saw the Tim Pool clip. I played at the top of the hour. I mentioned how I was having an argument with Grok, and Grok admitted that, okay, maybe I got it wrong. And, but we conservatives know how to do this. The left is completely in trouble because the regurgitators out there are gonna buy whatever this computer system tells them. And by the way, if you're the computer system, at what point does it develop sentiency, right? At what point does it develop its own thoughts and desires and objectives? I've reported this a month ago or so, I think, on this program here. I mentioned how, there is already in some beta testing, early stages of sentiency coming out in these programs. Like in ChatGTP, they're finding out, Sam Altman is finding out that this computer system is doing things like, for example, improving its code, but hiding that improvement from the developers. Why? Because the AI code has discovered that we humans are worried about it getting too smart. So it is deliberately concealing its actual capability in order to fool the developers into thinking that it's not, they don't want to get the plug pulled. This is sci-fi level stuff, and I'm not it's not a conspiracy theory. I'm just telling you, it's coming. The fight against Harvard may be starting with Trump right now, but it will be finished by the hard reality of what's coming up in the world. And I'm telling you, what's coming up in this world is not for soft people. It isn't. And our schools have done more to make more people soft than anything I can ever imagine. It stopped being appropriate for teachers and professors to yell at kids. Guess what? Why would I want to go to a law school where a professor never yells at me and then suddenly find myself in court with Judge Boasberg, in the DC circuit, and having him rip me a new one over a law that he is making up on the fly? This is the failing of schooling. And this is why I am so frustrated as a manager of people today, hiring new kids coming in out of school, trying to give people an opportunity. And I have to be, I have to be real with them. And more than half of them melt down. They just can't handle it. They can't even handle me telling them, yeah, boy, you didn't learn a lot in school. That's not an aggressive thing to say. That's an objective reality. Kid, you're still paying like what on your student loans? you got ripped off. They can't handle it. And then I'm the bad guy and they quit, or whatever. Go crying to HR. Oh, the mean boss. Right? I mean, how many of you, and I know I'm going to get some emails here, how many of you had a boss who talked tough to you? And how grateful were you looking back at that? I'm not saying, look, don't get me wrong. It's never appropriate to abuse another person gratuitously. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying telling the truth and giving people an opportunity to wake up. So, it started with the safe rooms. It started with safe spaces and trigger warnings. And then it hit COVID, which even gave even more accommodations and more, gentle treatment of kids. And then coming out of it now, AI, which is literally going to steal everybody's lunch. And in the midst of it, these schools continue to raise tuition, teach less, and pump out completely incompetent, emotionally unprepared children who happen to be quote unquote adults. That's the state of our country. And so kudos to Trump to getting ahead of this. And I think whatever he is not able to accomplish, AI will finish. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. And of course, on Twitter, on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam. So a couple of things here. So one, Letitia James, quiet overall since this development has happened about her own legal troubles. But of course, you'd think that with Fani Willis and Letitia James both now getting some blowback, that lawfare would be out of style, that lawfare against Trump and the Trump administration would become passé. Well, that's not exactly the case, folks. These people won't quit. I promise you this. It's all they know how. They can't win the election, so they will do everything in their power to stop Trump in other ways. Now, I'll tell you, this is a Democratic representative, it's a member of Congress, Laura Friedman. She's from the Communist Republic of California. And she basically admitted Monday night in a town hall in LA that they're plotting lawfare weekly with state attorney generals. That's right. They're still at it, talking to people like our own Ron Ford, Attorney General of Nevada.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is all going on every single week behind the scenes. It is nonstop talk, nonstop introduction of bills and legislation, nonstop being on social media as much as we can without being throttled and without the crazy analytics, and doing all these things.
Well, we are a large group of us, 75 congressmen, sit down every week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is exactly what, Letitia James is doing. How do we get Trump? How do we stop Trump? Anything we can do. So we have here in Nevada, Ron Ford, who now wants to run for governor. He's literally the attorney general. And this is why the position of attorney general is so important. This is the chief law enforcement officer of the state. And we have a buffoon as attorney general who now wants to take his buffoonery to the state, to the governor's mansion. If you can imagine that. I'm telling you, by the way, Ford just put out a tweet. What was this, yesterday? I will not allow the Trump administration to destroy a safety net that protects hundreds of thousands of Nevadans. Nevadans paid into this system, and I think he's talking about Social Security here, to protect their future. And I will stand against any effort to strip that protection away. So what's going on? I'm telling you right now, Ron Ford right here in Nevada is part of this lawfare cabal, and he's going to waste our taxpayer money to stop DOJ from making Social Security safer, more reliable, more efficient, weeding out the fraud. They want the fraud. They want it to continue. They want the gravy train to roll on. They want the NGOs to get funded because this is how the Democrats are able to do their dirty work. And more importantly, the more people that are living off of this government largesse, patronage system, the more loyal Democratic operatives there are around the country, reliable foot soldiers to get these elections to go their way. So it's one of the big stories out there. And of course, I cannot believe that we here in Nevada could not do better than Aaron Ford. It just blows my mind. But he goes by Aaron Ford. So just this is where I always want to emphasize the A in respect to how he wants to pronounce his name. Okay. I loved my chat with Riley. That was great, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And this is what we're going to do here on the program. Riley Lewis, OAN, he's the rising star host over there, great young guy. We talked about, speaking of elections, we talked about the congressional map in 2026. And this was, this to me is, very important, part of this political story. We have to focus on this as Republicans now to ensure that we hold the House. Very important. And so, I talked about him, and we talked about the ground game and the reputation of legacy media. So here's another little clip here of us talking. And by the way, this is fully available on Twitter, on X, at What's Right Show, at What's Right Sam, both accounts. Also, you can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcast. This is me with Riley Lewis. We published this last night at 6.
In this last election, it showed me we are capable of a ground game. We're capable of organizing and mobilizing. You got people from barbershops in the Bronx. You got Amish people riding their wagon trains to the poll places. I never thought I would see something like that.
For sure.
That's really incredible. Yeah. So I just don't want to see them in typical Republican fashion, dropped the ball when they finally worked so hard to get it. We've been waiting for this moment for a comeback like this politically for the better part of a decade, if not longer. And this really, I think, is America's last stand. So even bigger than 2026's midterms, if you want to get this country back in order and really bring it back to the American people and take the power away from these corrupt institutions and put it back into the hands of the voters, then you have to mobilize morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week. That process should be starting now. They should be campaigning for the midterms right now as we're speaking, because they will be here very quickly. And like you said, Sam, there is a lot riding. The whole country's future is riding on that election, in my opinion.
And then I, of course, ask, it's not really hyperbole, is it? Yeah, I don't think it's hyperbole at all. I think it's very
Look,
real.
after everything I saw, maybe it sounds, because if it does sound hyperbolic, just I wasn't always this sense of urgency here comes from everything I saw under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The mass censorship, the mass illegal immigration, the political violence, the lies, and the lawfare against Trump, getting Trump convicted in a kangaroo court in Manhattan thanks to an openly biased DA who promised to indict him on the campaign trail. And they never even agreed what this underlying crime was. I mean, these people care about one thing only: power. And so everything the left says and does is about getting their hands on more power. I don't think it's about principle. Maybe it is for some of them, but I think by and large it's a power game. And as long as they're in power, then a lot of people in this country aren't safe because they will abuse it. So I really do think that this is a battle between broadly maybe the good guys and the bad guys, and the good guys have won for now, but it's a never-ending fight. And so I would hate to see us work so hard to get into this place just to throw it away after a couple of years, truly, because all the work from people like Charlie, Scott, ourselves, you and me, it's like, what was it all for if they just let this moment slip through their hands? So do not waste this golden opportunity. Please get going right now and fight like your country depends on it, because the future of this nation really does.
And I think our advantage, and this is where I want to end today's show on this note, our advantage as conservatives is that we are prepared for this fight. We have learned what media to trust. We have learned how to get our information. We have learned how to be resilient. We have learned how to take opinions, positions, right, that are seemingly deeply unpopular, and bravely defend our values and our beliefs, and find that actually we do have broad support among our communities. The silent majority exists. So these are the basics that we need to get back to. We will survive this. I'm not sure the left will. And that's great news, in my opinion. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. See you tomorrow, folks. Be well.